Good morning, church. It is my distinct pleasure to speak to you this morning regarding the state of the economy. But for me to really talk to you about the state of the economy, I need to explain to you the measure that determines the state of a government's economy. That's called gross domestic product or GDP. GDP is a calculation which basically puts together three or four major factors, but the major factors are government spending, consumer spending, importation, and exportation. The combination of these four factors are the main drivers of GDP for any country, and GDP growth is what determines whether or not your economy is healthy, whether it's booming, or whether it's in a recession. Uh, your economy is booming if it's growing by more than 1, 2, or 3% per quarter, and if it's shrinking by more than 1, 2, 3% in 3 consecutive quarters, then your economy is said to be in recession. Now, looking at the Belize economy, government spending is one of the biggest drivers of our economy, and that is why in the past the whole issue of what the government does with the Petro-Caribbean money was important because government spending is what drives any economy. And as you know, our government spent most of the Petro-Caribbean money on infrastructure, with the idea that infrastructure tends to put the lower level individuals at work. You know, people who are general laborers who mix cement and who, they don't have high educational skill. This is good and this is bad because when jobs are being given princip- when jobs are being given principally to individuals of lower level skills, it doesn't really develop the economy well in the long term. It helps you in the short term, but in the long term, you want the job to be distributed across all sectors of the society. Um, Government also spends a lot of money from borrowing. The borrowing generally comes from the IDB or the World Bank, and again, they take that borrowing money and generally put it into more infrastructure work to try to get the people to work. And the bulk of the government money really comes from importation taxes, which we call duties, and from excise taxes and GST. GST is the spending that the money that the government make when you go to the shop and you buy, and the GST is charged on the goods, and those goods are passed over to the government. And as you know, consumer spending has been largely affected in Belize by crime, because when the crime is high, then people don't go out to buy, or people don't go to other non-traditional business events like concerts and these things, because people want to get home early. They don't want to be out there when we're having those problems. So the crime has significantly impacted the state of the Belize economy and will continue to do so if we're not careful. Another big driver of the economy that I needed to talk about is oil and the price of fuel. The price of fuel is one of the leading drivers of how government receives revenue, and the more revenue taxes government puts on fuel, then the more money government has to put in its own government spending. But the flip side to that is the more expensive the fuel is, and so the more expensive the transportation of goods are, and so the standard of living of the country, the index for the standard of living then goes up. So basically, our cost of living goes up when the price of oil is too high. So these are some of the key things that I really wanted to touch. And in the end, I wanted to mention that from an importation perspective, our biggest product is the tourism product, and that has been doing really well, both cruise tourism and overnight tourism. But the crime situation and the advisories that the Americans put out all the time is really not helping our cause in this area, and I think that is also a cause for concern. So fuel not doing as well as it should, crime driving both our tourism product out of the way, and finally our final exports, which are sugarcane, doesn't get preferential markets anymore. Um, the state of the economy is very challenging for Belize right now. We have several challenges, but so does the rest of the world, and people generally survive these things. So it's generally economists will tell you the state of the economy is not good, but they've been saying that for since you were small, and those things don't change the world that much. So don't worry that much. Bye.